I'm listening to John Mackey today, the author of Conscious Capitalism, Conscious Leadership. And he was saying, we need to get away from this mentality, this warlike mentality that is the reason for how businesses may have started in the first place, that or religion itself. How do we get away from, like you mentioned, is a competitor, or are they a partner? How does a leader, an algorithmic leader, look at a scenario like that?
I think one of the key qualities of a algorithmic leader is the ability to realize they operate in an ecosystem. So the boundaries of the firm are starting to disappear. So your ability to build smart connections with the other participants in your ecosystem, whether they're your suppliers, your partners, regulators, other organizations that traditionally may have been thought of as your competitor, you need to kind of redraw those boundaries, because it might be that, you're competing in the retail space against them for customers using different strategies, but you're actually using their infrastructure because that makes sense. And this is the situation people find with Amazon all the time, right? You might be Amazon's competitor, but you're using their infrastructure. And it's not like it's a traditional war or a conflict in the past where, you'd get your Nike logo tattooed on your arm and, it would be hell or high water, right? We're much more interdependent now. And that's okay, because it's about the consumer. And the consumer should have that power of choice, without companies drawing battle lines.
Interesting. Another one comes in from Donna Jones. She asks, how to best use this pandemic period to restore connection to natural systems and ourselves?
Well, I can tell you as a personal answer to that, I used to travel 300 days a year. So I was, probably only at home for 60 days, essentially. And that was devastating toll on me physically. So one of the biggest shifts for me from traveling all the world and speaking to being in one place, getting regular sleep, getting better diet, and getting up in the middle of the night to do webinars. Aside from that, it's been transformative. So I think this has been an interesting opportunity for all of us as leaders in organization to think about the choices we make, about how we structure and design work, and to think about balance. So let's see what happens next year. But in some ways, I think this has been a great opportunity for many people to kind of reflect on their lifestyles.
Now, Mike, I didn't get into your personal background. What's your background, your experience? I know you mentioned in the book you started out being a lawyer. How are you here now?
If you find anyone who's a futurist, they usually failed at doing something else. So sure. I was, I studied to be, I did 2 degrees at university, actually. I did accounting and law. But when I graduated, I was meant to go work for a big consulting firm. But then the internet happened. This is the late 90s. And to me, in that moment, it didn't matter what you trained to do. It didn't matter what you planned to be. If you were not involved in the internet, you were wasting your time as a young person. Because for the first time, this was a industry where no one knew any better than you. I mean, experience was useless. Any experience you gained prior to 1995 was just simply irrelevant in that world that was being born. So that's what I did, and I kind of never went back. And probably the most interesting experience was not just those early years of the internet. I spent quite a long time living in China, Japan, Korea, India, in Southeast Asia, working in digital media. And it long before the iPhone, it gave me a sense of the world that was going to come, a world where smartphones were going to transform our experience of life. So that's really what set me on this path.
Boldest prediction for 2021?
I think we're going to start to see the rapid adoption of augmented reality in our daily lives by the end of 2021. And this really depends whether Apple brings out their rumored AR glasses. But to me, we're already, the next sort of generation phones that are coming out have got LiDAR built into them, better object tracking. Once, it was already a big thing when the the digital world kind of emerged. But when the physical world becomes digital, that's going to really rewrite the rules of how we live, work, and play.
Of everything. Absolutely. Okay, last question, Mike, for you. This comes in from Andrew. And Andrew asks, Mike, I completely agree that we need to be data-driven and to be comfortable with ambiguity, which I completely agree with. He agrees. However, how can we find clarity in the data? There are so many outlets for data, and research can be controversial. So basically, how should we be able to clarify what data is the best data to use?
Data is not the answer. Data is the question. So data basically gives us a way of having conversations with other people in our team, with our leaders, with the people running countries, about different lenses to look at a problem. And to me, you know, if you're going to be data driven, you have to first acknowledge that data itself isn't always as objective as we think. There's no hidden answer in there, because as we were talking about before, Kevin, you know, you can use data to sometimes prove different points depending on how you slice it. But one thing is for certain: if data becomes the means that you're having conversation, it allows you to challenge ideas that have been considered sacrosanct.
Right.
It allows someone who hasn't been around the organization for a long time to actually make an interesting and challenging point that can maybe transform your strategy. It breaks down barriers of hierarchy. So that, to me, is the real benefit of data, is it gives us a means, especially in a distributed organization, of having real conversations about things that really matter.
Great takeaways today. Data do not care about your feelings, that's for sure. Mike, appreciate your you coming on the Real Leaders podcast today. Before we go, where can our audience find more about you, book you for a keynote session, and read that magnificent book?
They can definitely check out my website at mike-walsh.com. They can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. It's just at Mike Walsh. And if you want to see some more examples of my talks and my videos, just go to youtube.com/Michael Walsh. I just put the link as well in the chat.
Links are flying in. We just want to thank you all for tuning in again to the Real Leaders podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere we're listening to podcasts. Who knows where we'll be in a couple of years, but right now we're on Apple Podcasts. Go leave a review. Let us know what you think, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.